The house had never been this quiet. For 43 years, Margaret's voice had lived in every corner of it. The kitchen still smelled faintly of her cinnamon tea. Her favorite chair still faced the window where she used to watch the birds every morning.
But now, there was only silence. I stood in the hallway holding her photograph, still wearing the black suit from the funeral. I hadn't even taken off my tie yet. I didn't have the strength. The day had drained something from me I didn't think could ever return. People always say the hardest moment is the funeral. They're wrong. The hardest moment is when everyone leaves. My son Daniel had just driven away with his wife, Carla. He hugged me before leaving, a quick, careful hug, the kind you give a stranger at a formal event. "Dad, you shouldn't stay alone tonight," he said. "You're not thinking clearly. We'll help you handle things tomorrow." Handle things. I didn't ask what he meant. I was too tired. I locked the front door and slowly walked into the living room. Margaret's knitting basket sat beside the couch. Jan still looped through the needles like she'd just stepped out for a minute. I sat down, and for the first time since the hospital, I cried. Not quietly, not bravely, like a man who had just lost the only person who truly knew him. Then my phone rang. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Hello," I said, my voice barely working. A calm male voice replied, "Mr. Robert Hayes." "Yes." "This is Thomas Whitaker. I was your wife's attorney." I frowned. My wife didn't have an attorney. A pause. "Yes," he said gently. "She did. And she told me to call you immediately after the funeral. Not before. Not the next day. Today." My hand tightened around the phone. "Why?" Another pause. Then his voice lowered. "Mr. Hayes, I'm going to say something difficult. Your wife left very specific instructions." My heart started pounding. "What instructions?" He took a slow breath. "She told me that after her death, you would be in danger." I stood up. "What?" Then he said the sentence that made my blood run cold. "Mr. Hayes, do not trust your own son." The room suddenly felt smaller. "That's ridiculous," I said. "Daniel loved his mother." "I'm sure he did," the lawyer replied carefully. "But your wife didn't leave guesses. She left evidence." My mouth went dry. Evidence of what? His answer came quietly. Evidence that someone close to you has been preparing for her death for over a year. My hand started shaking. "Come to my office tomorrow morning," he said. "And Mr. Hayes, don't tell anyone about this call." The line went dead. I stood alone in the living room, staring at Margaret's empty chair. For the first time since I lost her, I felt fear instead of grief. And suddenly, I remembered something strange. The last week in the hospital, Margaret had held my hand tightly and whispered, "Promise me you won't sign anything Daniel gives you." I thought she was confused. Now, I wasn't so sure. If you want to know what Margaret left for him, and why she was afraid of her own son, make sure to subscribe and stay with the story. Part 2 will reveal what the lawyer showed Robert the next morning, and it changed everything. Part 2, the envelope. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the house sounded louder than usual. The wind brushing the trees outside felt like whispers against the walls. I kept hearing Margaret's last words in my head. "Don't sign anything Daniel gives you." at 3:17 a.m. I finally gave up trying to sleep and walked into the kitchen. I made coffee, the way. Margaret liked it, then realized I was still making 2 cups out of habit. I stared at the second cup for a long time. Then I poured it into the sink. Morning couldn't come fast enough. At exactly 8:30 a.m., I pulled into a small brick office building across town. A polished brass sign read, Whitaker and Cole, Estate and Trust Attorneys. My hands felt strangely heavy as I walked inside. A receptionist stood and smiled softly. You must be Mr. Hayes. Mr. Whitaker is expecting you. Expecting me. The words felt ominous. She led me down a quiet hallway into a private office. A grey-haired man in a navy suit stood when I entered. His expression wasn't welcoming. It was concerned. Mr. Hayes, he said gently, shaking my hand. I'm sorry for your loss. I nodded. Please, tell me why my wife warned me about my son. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to a locked cabinet, opened it with a key, and pulled out a thick sealed envelope. My name was written across the front, in Margaret's handwriting. My chest tightened instantly. I received this from your wife 11 months ago, he said. She came here alone. She was very calm, but very afraid. My voice came out rough. Afraid of what? He placed the envelope in front of me. Before you open it, he said, I need you to understand something. Margaret did not come here to write a simple will. She came because she believed someone was manipulating your finances and planning to take your home after she passed. I froze. That's impossible, I whispered. Daniel would never. Please, the lawyer said softly, just read. My hand shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. I recognized her handwriting immediately. My dearest Robert, if you are reading this, it means I am gone, and I am so sorry I couldn't protect you longer. Daniel is not acting alone. For the past year, Carla has been pushing him to transfer the house into his name. She thinks I don't notice the papers she keeps bringing. She believes I am too weak to understand legal documents. But I listened. I overheard them 3 months ago. They were waiting for me to die so you would be grieving and confused. They plan to convince you to sign a temporary care agreement. It is not temporary. It transfers ownership of the house and your retirement accounts to Daniel. They believe you will sign it because you trust your son. Please don't. My vision blurred. I couldn't breathe. No, I whispered. Whitaker quietly slid another document toward me. These were emailed to your son 2 weeks ago, he said. I looked down. It was a power of attorney form. Prepared, but unsigned. My signature line was already filled in. Except, I never signed it. My stomach dropped. That's a scanned copy, the lawyer said carefully. And Mr. Hayes, the signature on that document is a forgery. The room tilted around me. Yesterday, he continued, your son called this office after the funeral, asking how quickly property transfers can be finalized after a spouse's death. My heart started pounding violently. Then I remembered something. Last night, before leaving, Daniel had said, Dad, tomorrow I'll bring some paperwork. Just routine stuff. I slowly sank into the chair. He was coming. And now I knew why. Whitaker leaned forward. Your wife anticipated this. She set up legal protection. but only if you act before he does. I swallowed. What do I do? The lawyer looked straight at me. You let him bring the papers. And you don't warn him, you know. I stared at the forged signature. For the first time in my life, I realized my son wasn't coming to help me. He was coming to take everything. Here in part 3, Daniel arrives with the paperwork, but Robert is no longer the grieving father he expected, and a hidden recording will change the entire confrontation. Part 3, The Papers. I returned home just before noon. For the first time in 32 years, the house didn't feel safe. Margaret's favorite chair sat by the window exactly where she left it. Her knitting basket rested beside it. Nothing had changed. Yet everything had. I kept replaying the lawyer's words. Let him bring the papers. Don't warn him. Whitaker had also handed me something else before I left. A tiny digital recorder. Barely larger than a coin. Put it somewhere close, he said. We need him to explain the document in his own words. My hands trembled as I placed the recorder beneath. A stack of magazines on the coffee table. Then I waited. At 2:14 p.m., a car pulled into the driveway. Daniel and Carla. I watched through the window. They weren't grieving anymore. They weren't even Samba. Carla was smiling. Not softly, but confidently. Like someone arriving to finalize a deal. My chest tightened. I opened the door before they knocked. Hey, Dad, Daniel said, overly gentle. How are you holding up? I forced a weak smile. I'm managing. Carla walked in carrying a leather folder. I made some soup for you, she said sweetly. She didn't bring soup. She brought documents. We sat in the living room. I purposely chose Margaret's chair and let Daniel take the couch, right beside the hidden recorder. For a few minutes, they talked about the funeral, flowers, condolences. Meaningless conversation. Then Daniel cleared his throat. Dad, there's just a little paperwork we should handle. Nothing complicated. My heart pounded. Here it was. He opened the folder and pulled out a stack of papers. I just want to help take stress off you, he said. You shouldn't be worrying about bills or the house right now. I looked at the document but pretended not to read closely. What is it? I asked quietly. Carla leaned forward reassuringly. It's temporary authority, she said. Just so Daniel can manage things while you recover emotionally. Utilities, insurance, bank communication. That sort of thing. Temporary. Exactly the word Margaret wrote in the letter. I felt cold. Will I still own the house? I asked. Daniel answered quickly. Of course, Dad. Nothing changes. It just lets me handle paperwork so you don't have to. My fingers tightened on the paper. I already knew. The clause was there. Irrevocable property transfer upon incapacity. And incapacity could be declared by one physician. 1. The lawyer had been right. They weren't planning to help me. They were planning to legally remove me. I looked up slowly. Why do you need this today? I asked. Daniel hesitated. Carla answered. Well, banks can freeze accounts after a spouse dies. We don't want you locked out. That was a lie. Whitaker had already confirmed my accounts were secure. I set the paper on the table. I'm just tired, I said softly. Can you explain it one more time? Daniel leaned closer. It gives me control over finances and property decisions, but only for your benefit. There it was. Control. The recorder was capturing every word. I nodded slowly. And if I didn't sign? The room went silent. Carla's polite smile faded slightly. Daniel's voice changed, just a little. Dad, this is really necessary. Otherwise things could get complicated. The house taxes, maintenance. You can't handle all this alone anymore. Alone. They were already pushing me out. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time I saw not my son, but a man waiting for permission to replace me. I slid the paper back toward him. Okay, I said quietly. Relief flashed across Carla's face instantly. Daniel grabbed a pen. Right here, Dad. I held the pen, but I didn't sign. Instead, I set it down. I want to read it tonight, I said. The air in the room changed immediately. Carla's jaw tightened. Daniel forced a smile. Dad, it's standard paperwork. There's no reason to wait. I stood up. I said tomorrow. For a split second, his mask slipped. I saw irritation, then anger, then calculation. Fine, he said coldly, but don't delay too long. We are only trying to help you. They left 10 minutes later. The moment the door closed, my knees gave out and I sat down. My son hadn't come to comfort me after losing my wife. He came to take my home. And now, I had proof. Here in part 4, Daniel makes a mistake. He returns earlier than expected. And Robert overhears a conversation outside his own. House that reveals an even darker plan. Part 4, the conversation outside. I didn't sleep that night. Margaret's side of the bed remained untouched, but I couldn't bring myself to lie there either. I stayed in the living room with the lights off, replaying the recorder again and again. Daniel's voice sounded different when you listened closely. Not worried, not caring, calculated. Gives me control over finances and property decisions. Every time I heard it, something inside me cracked. Around 7 a.m., I called Mr. Whitaker. I have it, I said. Good, he replied calmly. But Robert, we still need one more thing. What? Intent. I frowned. You mean proof they planned this? Yes. The document is dangerous. But what makes a court act fast is evidence they meant to remove you unlawfully. I didn't understand how I could possibly get that. Whitaker answered before I even asked. They will return, he said. People like that always do when they think they almost won. He was right. That afternoon, I heard a car again, but they didn't knock. I looked through the hallway window and saw Daniel and Carla standing near the porch, arguing. Quietly, I moved closer to the door and opened it just a crack. I wasn't trying to spy. I just needed to know who my son had become. Carla's voice was sharp. You should have pushed harder. He almost signed. Daniel sounded nervous. He's suspicious. Then we move faster, she said. The doctor appointment is already set. My heart stopped. Doctor? What doctor? Daniel asked. The one my father recommended, she replied. He'll declare cognitive decline. After that, the power of attorney becomes automatic. My hands started shaking. They weren't waiting for me to sign anymore. They were planning to declare me mentally unfit. To legally erase me. Daniel hesitated. Isn't that extreme? Carla lowered her voice, but I still heard every word. Daniel, listen to me. Once he's declared incompetent, we control the house, accounts, everything. We can move him into assisted living within a week. A week. My own son said nothing. That silence hurt more than any insult ever could. Then he spoke. And the will? Carla smiled. I already checked. His current will leaves most of it to you. Once he's under guardianship, we can update it before he even realizes. My chest tightened so hard I had to grab the wall. They weren't just taking my house. They were planning to take my life. My foot shifted slightly against the door. A creak. They froze. I stepped back quickly, heart racing. A moment later, knock, knock, knock. Dad. Daniel called. Are you home? I waited 5 seconds and opened the door slowly, pretending I had just woken up. Oh, I didn't hear you, I said weakly. Carla instantly switched her expression to warm concern. We were worried about you, she said sweetly. You didn't answer your phone. I forced a tired smile. I fell asleep in the chair. Daniel watched me carefully. Did you read the document? I shook my head. I will tonight. Carla stepped inside without asking. Actually, we scheduled a wellness check with a doctor tomorrow. Just routine. After losing Mom, you might need support. There it was. The trap. I nodded slowly. That sounds helpful. They relaxed. They thought I didn't know, but I now understood something terrifying. My wife hadn't feared a possibility. She had predicted this. As soon as they left, I grabbed my keys and drove straight to Whitaker's office. I didn't even sit down. They're going to declare me incompetent tomorrow, I said. Whitaker stood up immediately. Tell me everything. I told him the entire conversation. He didn't look surprised. He looked prepared. Robert, he said quietly, opening a folder Margaret had left. Your wife didn't just warn you. He slid a document across the desk. She protected you. I looked down. It was notarized. Signed months ago. Margaret's signature. My hands trembled. What is this? Whitaker met my eyes. It's a conditional legal safeguard. That activates if anyone attempts to take control of you or your property. My voice barely came out. What does it do? Whitaker answered softly. It transfers decision authority away from your son. I stared at him. To who? He took a breath. Tomorrow in court. You'll find out. In Part 5, the doctor appointment turns into a courtroom. Emergency hearing, and Daniel realizes. Margaret outplayed him long before she died. Part 5, the hearing. The next morning, Daniel arrived earlier than usual. He was polite. Too polite. Ready, Dad? He asked gently. It's just a simple medical check. The doctor only wants to make sure you're okay after everything. Carla stood behind him, already holding her purse and car keys. I nodded slowly, pretending hesitation. I suppose. It couldn't hurt. Inside, my heart was racing. I wasn't going to a clinic. I was walking into their plan, and Whitaker had told me to go. The office building looked like a private medical center. Clean, quiet, expensive. Carla signed us in before I even reached the desk. Mr. Hayes is here for cognitive evaluation. She told the receptionist confidently. Evaluation. Daniel avoided my eyes. We waited about 10 minutes before a nurse called my name. But instead of taking me into an exam room, she guided us down a different hallway, one with wooden doors and brass nameplates. Carla frowned. This isn't the medical wing. The nurse smiled politely. Noam, you've been redirected. We stopped in front of a door marked Probate Court, Hearing Room B. Carla's face lost color. What is this? She demanded. Before anyone answered, the door opened. Mr. Whitaker stepped out. Good morning, he said calmly. Daniel froze. Dad, what's going on? I looked at him quietly. You wanted professionals involved, I said. So did your mother. Inside the room sat a judge, a court clerk, and a court-appointed physician. Carla's composure cracked. This is ridiculous. We scheduled a medical evaluation. Whitaker handed the judge a document. Your Honor, we are invoking the pre-authorized protective review requested by Margaret Hayes, filed 11 months ago. The judge nodded and adjusted her glasses. Mrs. Hayes anticipated an attempt to establish involuntary guardianship over her husband. She requested that any such attempt trigger immediate judicial review. Daniel looked at me, confused. Guardianship. Whitaker's voice was steady. Your wife contacted a doctor to declare Mr. Hayes mentally unfit. That constitutes a guardianship attempt. Carla stepped forward. We were helping him. He's grieving. The judge raised her hand. Then you won't mind reviewing the evidence. Whitaker pressed a button on a small device. The recorder played. Daniel's voice filled the room. Gives me control over finances and property decisions. Then Carla's voice. We can move him into assisted living within a week. Her face turned white. Daniel looked like he couldn't breathe. The judge turned to the court physician. Doctor, you've spoken with Mr. Hayes this morning. Yes, Your Honor, the physician replied. Mr. Hayes is fully mentally competent. No cognitive impairment. Carla shook her head. This is manipulation. No, the judge said calmly. This is prevention. She looked at Daniel. Your mother anticipated coercion. She filed a legal protection known as a protective trust trigger. Daniel's voice trembled. What does that mean? Whitaker answered. It means you are no longer authorized to manage, influence, or access your father's property or finances. Silence. Then the judge added the final blow. And due to evidence of attempted exploitation, the court is assigning temporary protective oversight to the individual your wife appointed. Daniel looked at me. Who? I swallowed. I didn't know either. Whitaker turned to the door. Please come in. The door opened slowly, and the person who walked inside made Daniel stumble backward. You. He whispered, because standing there was someone he never expected, and Margaret had trusted them more than her own son. A Part 6 will reveal who Margaret chose to protect, Robert, and why she believed that person would never betray him. Part 6, Margaret's Choice. The courtroom fell silent as the door opened. Footsteps echoed softly across the floor. I turned toward the entrance, and my breath caught. Standing there was a woman in her early 40s, nervous but composed, holding a folder tightly against her chest. Daniel's face went pale. "Emily," he whispered. I stared at her, confused. I recognized her, but I hadn't seen her in over 15 years. Emily Carter, Margaret's niece. The girl my wife had helped raise after her parents died. Margaret loved Emily like a daughter. 4 years, Emily lived with us during college. Margaret taught her cooking, sewing, even budgeting. She sat with her through exams and comforted her through heartbreaks. After she moved to another state for work, life slowly created distance. We still exchanged holiday cards, but not much more. I never imagined Margaret had trusted her with something this important. Emily looked at me, eyes full of emotion. "Uncle Robert." "I'm so sorry," she said softly. The judge nodded. "Ms. Carter has been appointed protective trustee under Mrs. Hayes. Contingency directive." Daniel looked completely stunned. "You gave everything to her?" He asked me. I shook my head slowly. "Your mother did." Whitaker handed the judge another document. Mrs. Hayes met with Ms. Carter twice over the past year. She explained her concerns and asked her to step in only if an exploitation attempt occurred. Emily swallowed. "She told me she didn't want to believe it," Emily said quietly. She kept saying, "I hope I'm wrong about Daniel." Daniel couldn't even look at her. Carla finally snapped. "This is insane. You're letting an outsider control family property." The judge's voice remained calm. "Ms. Carter is not controlling the property. She is protecting Mr. Hayes from coercion, which the recording clearly demonstrates." Carla had no answer. I turned toward Emily. "Why didn't she tell me?" I asked softly. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "She said you loved Daniel too much. She knew you wouldn't believe her, and she didn't want to break your heart while she was still alive." My chest tightened painfully. Margaret had carried this fear alone, all to protect me. The judge signed the order. Effective immediately, any financial decisions involving Mr. Hayes require trustee approval. Mr. Hayes retains full personal rights and residence control. Daniel stepped forward. "Dad, I never wanted this to happen." For the first time, his voice sounded small. I looked at him, not angry anymore, just tired. "You didn't want this outcome," I said quietly, "but you chose the path that led here." He opened his mouth, but no words came, because he knew it was true. As we left the courtroom, Carla walked ahead without waiting for him. Daniel stayed behind. "Dad, please," he said softly. "We can fix this." I paused. "I hope someday we can," I answered. "But trust isn't paperwork you sign once." Emily stood beside me, not speaking, just supportive, exactly as Margaret must have hoped. For the first time since her funeral, I felt she was still protecting me. In the final part, Daniel makes one last decision to prove whether he truly regrets his actions, and Robert must choose between justice and forgiveness. Part 7, final part. 3 weeks passed after the court hearing. The house slowly began to feel like home again. Emily helped me organize paperwork, cancel suspicious requests, and secure the accounts Margaret had worried about. She never acted like she owned anything. She only asked one question each time. "Uncle Robert, what do you want?" No one had asked me that in a long time. Daniel didn't visit. At first, I thought it was anger. Then I realized it was shame. I still saw his car drive by the street sometimes. He never stopped, never knocked, just slowed down and kept going. One afternoon, Emily handed me an envelope. "It came this morning," she said. My hands trembled slightly when I recognized the handwriting. Daniel's. I opened it. "Dad, I don't deserve to stand in front of you yet, so I'm writing instead. I kept telling myself I was helping you. The truth is, I was helping myself. I wanted security, approval, and comfort, and I chose the easy way to get it. Mom knew me better than I knew myself. I've moved out. Carla and I separated. Not because of money, but because I finally realized I stopped being the man you raised. I sold my car and paid back every dollar I tried to control. I'm not asking for forgiveness yet. I just want the chance to earn it. I'll come by Saturday at noon. If you don't open the door, I'll understand. Your son, Daniel." I read the letter twice. Then I sat quietly in Margaret's chair. Emily didn't interrupt. She simply placed a cup of tea beside me, cinnamon, just like Margaret used to. Saturday came faster than I expected. At exactly noon, a knock sounded at the door. My heart pounded harder than it had in court. I walked slowly to the entrance. For a moment, my hand rested on the handle. Then I opened it. Daniel stood there. Different. No expensive suit. No confident posture. Just a man who looked like he hadn't slept much. He didn't speak first. He just held out a small wooden box. "I found this in Mom's things," he said quietly. It was addressed to both of us. My chest tightened. I opened it. Inside was Margaret's wedding ring and a folded note. I unfolded it carefully. "My boys, if you're reading this together, then I got my last wish. Robert, protect your heart, but don't harden it. Daniel, a good man isn't measured by what he inherits, but by what he protects. Family is not proven when life is easy, only when it is tested. Take care of each other. I love you both. Margaret." Neither of us spoke for a long time. Daniel's voice finally broke. "I don't expect everything to go back to normal." I nodded. "It won't," I said gently. Then I stepped aside from the doorway. "But you can come inside." His eyes filled instantly. Not relief. Gratitude. He walked into the house slowly, not as a man claiming ownership, but as a son returning home. Months later, nothing magical happened. We didn't suddenly forget everything. We rebuilt. One conversation at a time. One Sunday coffee at a time. Daniel never asked about money again. And I never needed to test his intentions again. Because sometimes forgiveness isn't about forgetting betrayal. It's about recognizing change. Margaret had been right. Family isn't proven when life is easy. It's proven when someone finally chooses love over inheritance. And that day, my son finally did.